Great. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District. I don't even know what our name is anymore. I'm so tired tonight. For our 25-26 budget presentation. It's Thursday, the 27th. It's Thursday, the 27th of February. And I'm going to hand everything off to John and Nicole because I'm clearly too tired to even get the date right.
Thank you, Edie. My name is John Alberghini, and I'm the superintendent for Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District. And hopefully this will be, I'm retiring at the end of the year, and hopefully this will be my last budget informational meeting. But you never know, we're hopeful. Tonight we're gonna talk about some summative information about the budget and really take any questions that community members have. You can find a lot of information on our website. We also sent a flyer to every community member in Mount Mansfield with summative important information. And if you do have questions after the meeting, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Nicole, who's our Director of Finance and Operations, or myself. So there's two things that we were going to discuss tonight. The first is Article 2. I'm going to read that. So Article 2 is, shall the voters of the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District authorize the school board under 16 VSA 562 Section 9 to borrow money by issuance of bonds or notes not in excess of anticipated revenue for the school year. So that's that's a lot of words, a lot of word salad. But essentially that allows the school district to borrow money as a bridge when we are not getting revenue from the ed fund during the school year. And this is on the ballot, just about every year. And every school district in Vermont does this. It's quite positive because typically we make money because the state allows us to reinvest money so that it's either neutral or we make some money off it. So essentially it's a bridge called a tax anticipation note. It allows the school district to pay their bills in between the time when the state of Vermont is sending us revenue from the education fund. Any questions about that? Okay. So the other article is Article 3, and we're going to be sharing some information about Article 3, and I'll also read this to you. Shall the voters of the school district approve the school board to expend $61,290,046, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. The Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District estimates this proposed budget, if approved, will result in per pupil education spending $14,365, which is 5.95% higher than per pupil education spending for the current year. I think that's even changed a little bit, correct? Because we have some updated information from the state that we're going to share a little bit about in the presentation. So that 5.95% has gone down a little bit based on the most recent information from the state. We won't know for sure what that number is until the end of the legislative session, when they'll determine exactly what the ed funding formula will look like. Any questions about Article 3? Okay, so this is the informational piece of the meeting tonight. Nicole and I have some slides that we want to share with you. Please, you can either ask your questions at the end or stop me or Nicole and we'll answer any questions folks have. Brett, can you put the slides up? So I'm getting a little older, so I have to go like this. Sometimes my glasses on and off. Okay. So the first slide is important. This is on our website, so you can look at this anytime that you want. And there's a direct link in the presentation that brings you right to our budget development page. And you can see the annual report, budget flyer, and all of the drafts and other information about the FY26 budget. Brad? So we did have some challenges, obviously, in this budget development process and term. Over several months, we studied the budget, met with administrators, directors, other school staff to talk about what do we need for next fiscal year. And that's what we're presenting to you tonight. We have never had a rollover budget. So we take a look at each budget each year, and it's a needs-based budget. What do we need to best meet the needs of students? So some considerations and challenges that we encountered, that 5.95% increase. This was a significant challenge for us this year. So the AOE changed how it determines economically disadvantaged students going into this year compared to last year. And that had a tremendous and a significant impact on our weighted pupil count, which is our ed spending per pupil count that we use. We lost approximately 20 weighted students. That's as our enrollment is not going down and our demographic has not changed. So we connected with all of our legislators and the Deputy Secretary of Education and the Secretary of Education and showed them, this is an issue. You can't compare last year to this year because the method and data set that they used to determine our long-term weighted pupils is completely different. It had something to do with Medicaid and some changes to direct certification for people that they did not have to do this during the COVID era, but it is it's an oversight. I would say the AOE has acknowledged that, but honestly, there's not much we can do for this fiscal year. I don't see it changing. The Deputy Secretary of Education did get back to Nicole, myself, and Edie and shared that they did send this information to the Joint Fiscal Office to analyze, and we haven't really heard anything back from them. So this is pretty disappointing and, in my opinion, wrong, but it's something that we have to live with for this fiscal year. Also, healthcare is a big driver in this budget. We're estimating a 11.9% increase to employee health insurance, another double-digit year. When I certainly remember my time as superintendent where we had several years with single digits. So this has been a challenge and something that the whole state of Vermont and certainly all schools in Vermont school districts are grappling with it. And right now we're currently negotiating with educational support professionals and our teachers. So we have a placeholder in there for salary of 2.5%, but we're in the middle of negotiations. So that will be determined when we have an agreement. Next slide, please. So what is the budget all about? Really, one of our big overarching goals is to educate students to be effective and engaged citizens. And it starts very young. We have 3-year-olds that are in our schools, and my office, these are pictures of our preschoolers from across the district. This is the right-hand corner is an event that we got most of our preschools together at the Fire Farm in Richmond. And it is pretty amazing and inspiring to watch these young learners. My office sits right in the middle of two of them. And so I see literally 35 preschoolers every single day. They know me. I'm a part of their school community. And honestly, it's one of the best investments we could ever make. We're really meeting kids' needs very young, identifying their strengths and where they might need some extra support. And it saves money. And maybe just as important or more important is it helps students become effective, engaged, successful students that can meet their own aspirations and be successful when they move forward in life. So last week I talked about, I got an invitation and I brought the actual invitation from the preschoolers. They invited me to a tea and it reads, "Dear Mr. Egg, would you please come to our tea party on Fancy Thursday? Thursday, February 13th at 9 a.m. in the Owlet Preschool," that's the name of the preschool. Wear your fancy attire. If you want, please bring a stuffy. Love the Owlets and signed by all the students. So it's very special to me and to be a part of their school community, and it's honestly inspiring to watch how they're learning, the things they're doing, early math, early literacy, how they learn to listen to one another and play. It's amazing, quite frankly. And they're learning to share, follow reasonable directions. And like I said, just learn with using their hands and through play. And what happens is that investment and all the investments that we make from pre-K to 12, next slide, please. I did not choreograph this, but ends up here. We have a very high graduation rate, much higher than the state and the nation. And it's at a very, very good high school, in my opinion, with rigorous standards. And there's 216 strong of students that are doing all sorts of innovative and amazing activities and learning post high school. We have a lot of students that take gap years, and they call it a gap year before they go to college, and they volunteer, they travel, and just a lot of them trying to make a difference in the United States and across the world. And then we have about 70% of students that go on to some sort of post-secondary education, and other students that join the military, which we're very proud of, and go out and work. And I see these students all the time. In fact, I was at Alberghini buying a shirt right before convocation, and I ran into one of our MMU students, and they knew who I was. So I thought that was great too. But really terrific students who are doing some amazing things, and by most accounts of the feedback that I get, both from students and families, is they got a very good education. So those are the investments. That's what this budget is all about, is our students and families. So here we've set some targets at the beginning of the year, and both education spending, which I'll just stop there for a minute because this is a very important number. Education spending is non-property tax revenue. We take that out of the overall budget, and property tax, any spending that is relates or is covered by property tax or education spending. So we take non-property tax revenue out, and this is the number that your tax rate is based on. And our percentage increase this year is 1.32%. So when we started the budget process, we looked at inflation, we looked at what goods and services and resources and staffing were costing us, and we set these targets. Not the overall budget is 1.94%, and so we met our targets this year. We spent a lot of time going line by line over the budget, taking a look at individual education plan needs and services, our enrollment, and that's how we prepared our budget. This is our bumper sticker. We have these throughout, and they really try to capture some essential information that's in the slides. And you can see here the 1.32% education spending and the overall budget increase. Most people, which I understand, they go right to the 194, but the 132 is how your property taxes are determined. And we are, we repurposed the building, and we have people that are paying rent. And we're using space at Campbell's Hump also. This is all for care, high quality care for people in the community, and those people are also paying us rent for space that we have, and that reduces, what we need to garner from the state of Vermont. So that lowers our education spending. That makes sense? Because non-property tax revenue. So we're really looking for ways to do that all the time, and engaging in, really in optimizing resources and, thinking entrepreneurially when we can. Right. So here's our enrollment, and you can see I was talking to you about our education spending per pupil is based on these 2 years, not next year, because that's an estimate. Then each year, the state of Vermont around October, 40 days, they freeze our average daily membership or our enrollment. And, for us, we did not see a decrease in our enrollment, 2023-24 to 24-25. That's why that 5.9% increase is really, it's not accurate. I don't know how else to put it. It was something that the AOE has essentially said that they didn't really think about or see it coming, but it's had a pretty profound effect on our district and other districts. And then I also want people to know that we have preschool partnerships that we have agreements with, and there's certain criteria that they have to meet. And we have this year we have 165 preschool partnerships. Those are in our budget. There's a voucher that goes to families that have an agreement with Mount Mansfield, and they meet some certain criteria, and those vouchers are in our budget. And what's the voucher for next year? Do you remember? We can look it up. Sorry to put you on the spot. And we're estimating about 116 next year. We are seeing a decline in enrollment at the high school of about, it could change a little bit because we do have people that move in and move out. Last year we netted about 15 more students coming in over the summer. So we had some people move out, but we had more people move in, and we ended up getting 15 additional students. Mount Mansfield is going to be going down approximately 28 students, and the overall with the rest of the district factored in, it looks like about 21 students. That could go up and down. That's pretty close. So this number could look a little bit different, but we've done a really good job on tracking our enrollment. And when we have looked year to year, we've been almost right on. And that really helps us budget and budget accurately. The other point that I wanted to make about this is that those reductions, those reduced students at the high school, we reduced 1.7 teachers or full-time equivalents at the high school based on, our enrollment. So again, really looking at what do we need, what's the data telling us, and then making, the right choices or trying to.
The pre-K voucher amount for FY 26 is $3,982, and that's up about $100 from current.
And each year the state applies an inflationary increase to those. Next slide, please. So one thing before we move on from enrollment, we've been pretty, we would like it to be going up, our enrollment, at least I would. But we were declining for, several years, and we have really flattened out. So we've plateaued, and I don't anticipate that we are going to be, we're not going to be dropping, significant amounts of students, that at least not in the next few years. So this has been a hot topic in the news and also just in the legislature. And I wanted to show folks what our class sizes were and use some of the data, most recent data I have from the state so that people could do a comparison. I have had quite a few people reach out and say, how has Mount Mansfield been able to put together a budget at 1.94% and with ed spending of 1.32% without, just cut it. And I said to them a couple of reasons. One, the COVID money, we did not spend it on people, very little of it. We spent it on things that would help us down the road, like training and resources. So non-reoccurring costs. The other piece is that we have paid close attention to class sizes for years. And to make sure that they are not too low. We do have a policy that we adhere to. And we also, there are ed quality standards that we have to take into account that may change this year. But comparatively, our class sizes are solid. So the state did a profile at the end of August, and they had calculated that for Vermont, K-12 class size average for 23-24 was 11.2. Ours is 18.8. And you can see the different variations of class sizes in there. And those are ways that we've been able to control costs, over the last several years. The other piece I wanted to mention, because this came up at the last meeting. Sorry, it was in my bumper sticker. I love bumper stickers. Could you go back? So the question came up at our last budget information meeting about admin, leaders, and like principals, assistant principals, directors, our central office staff, and they wanted to know, what our we did a study a few years ago, and we had the lowest in the county at the time, and but the state did in their same profile, they the Vermont's average in 23-24 per 100 students was 1.4 administrators, and ours this year is 0.77. And might not sound like a lot, but that is pretty significant. And I shared this at the last budget meeting. It's something that I'm, I am pleased with, maybe a little even proud of, is that we have tried to focus our money in classrooms and students, not on administration. And, folks that have been on the board for a few years know that we don't add administration. We haven't. Even with changes, because we want to invest as much as we can in classrooms where, where the biggest difference is going to be made. And there's a lot of empirical data, that says that's where we should be putting our money, and that's where we have tried. Right. So we've also done a good job. And again, like, was that saying, if you toot your horn too much, the notes fall flat? So, but we've done a good job of taking care of our buildings. We really have. You can walk through this building and you can go down the road and you can walk through another high school and you'll know the difference. The board and the community have invested money in the building so that we don't have a bunch of deferred maintenance. We have some, and we've optimized and maximized the systems that we have, and they're running up to code and standard. And one of the ways that we've been able to do this is pick out, invest money in our budget and select projects that need, that need to get fixed, so that we don't end up spending more later. Boiler replacement, that's finally, we epoxy floored here at the high school. These are the original floors, from 1968. So they've done pretty well. We did in the 400 wing, we did do an epoxy floor there this year, and it looks good. So we're trying to do little bits at a time, and that seems to be working quite well. We are required, because we're on more than 3 acres, to have a storm water mitigation systems. And right now, we are on top of it, and we got the information that we needed to the state. And so it's a 90-10 split. So 90 of it is paid for through grants, federal government and the state, and we have to pick up 10%. But it's expensive. I mean, these systems are not cheap. And so we have $80,000 to be able to do that this summer. And then the zone valves at Camel's Hump, this is an efficiency thing. They're breaking down as part of their HVAC system. And that, so those are the projects that we're looking at for next year. These are the big budget drivers. These are in the flyer. We paid off more debt with some bonds have matured. We paid them off. So our debt service is down to $145,600. And then we cut, from miscellaneous, many areas, including our transfer to the capital reserve, transfer to food service, and child nutrition, a school bus, cutting out 1 school bus for next year, the 1.7 teachers I mentioned earlier. And then we went again line by line, looked at what we have spent in the past, what we're projecting our needs are going to be, and made some other reductions across a lot of lines. And those drivers they have the biggest impact on either increasing or decreasing the budget. Nicole, our excellent director of finance and operations.
Take over from here. Is the chart not showing? Oh, there we go. Okay. So the first part that you're seeing here is just the 3-year comparison of the overall budget. And you heard John mention the 1.94%. That's total expenditure increase from FY25 to FY26. And you'll note how much smaller that percentage is than we've seen the last 2 years. So we feel really good about that. We can go to the next slide. And then this is a comparison in total education spending. And John has talked a bit about that. So I won't spend too much time, but again, the 1.32 is really what starts the calculation, the property tax, the homestead tax calculation. And again, a pretty significant reduction in the increase year over year. Okay, this slide's a little bit wordy. John has already talked quite a bit about the 5.9%, 5.95%, but we really did want to draw folks' attention to this because it is a percentage that people are going to see on the ballot. And so we want folks to understand really what's driving that. Again, like John said, how the Vermont Agency of Education is determining our economically disadvantaged students. We're seeing a significant reduction, 120 pupils. And that's really the denominator of what equals our ed spending per pupil. We take our ed spending, the 1.32%, that number, divided by this base of weighted pupils, and that's what drives the 14,365 ed spending per pupil. So it, as John mentioned, this is significantly impactful for us. And it's frustrating to have to put the 5.95% on the warning, because it's just really not reflective of the work that was done in managing this budget and really controlling costs. So, good question.
Going forward, is the weighting going to be the same, or are there errors in that as well?
Can I? So if we don't make any changes to the education system in Vermont, the weighting will be held the same. As everybody knows, we're in the process of changing every part of the education system in Vermont. So we can't promise anything. But if everything stays the same next year, it should be.
It should be apples to apples. One thing I've mentioned on the slide is that I do not believe the legislature would have added that percentage back in, because it had been sunsetted for a few years. I don't think they would have added it back in if they would have known this issue. They didn't. The AOE did not let them know. And, you know, our legislators, when we met with them in December, they really didn't even understand it. And rightly so, because it had not been on their radar.
And not to toot our own horn, as John had said, but really they weren't aware of this being an issue until we brought it to their attention. So, but no, knock on wood, we're not anticipating any changes. So it'll be nice to be able to present to folks next year some actually comparable year-over-year information. So right here, we are presenting the homestead tax rates by town. In years past, we've put the entire calculation up there and then layered in CLA and showed folks by town. But again, because that calculation is not really comparable year over year, we thought we would get down to the information that everybody really wants to see. So we feel good about, you know, we have 5 towns presented in our budget, 3 of which we're presenting decreases for. And we had some questions come up at the last meeting, so I just want to address that before anyone raises their hand. You'll notice there, or you might ask yourself, why is there so much variability between the 5 towns? So the towns that are experiencing a small increase in the tax rate, Bolton and Underhill, they saw a double-digit change in their CLA rate between 25 and 26, meaning their CLA rate got further away. It decreased more than the other towns away from that perfect 100%. So that's why those 2 towns in particular are seeing a minor increase.
One piece I would add is that I got something from the tax department regarding Bolton, that they're challenging some of the home values, that they're too high in the common level of appraisal. And so they're going to be meeting with them to determine if that needs to be adjusted. If they do find that some homes are overvalued, then that will influence the CLA and the tax rate in a positive way.
We just don't know the outcome of that yet.
Questions?
Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question. It's not specific to Mount Mansfield, but does each school district negotiate its own health care costs?
No, it's all done through the state. Every school district has the same premium share and the same cost, and it's negotiated at the state level.
If I could add something. The reason I'm asking is my son, taught high school math in 2 different school districts last year. I did his taxes because I needed his income information. The W-2 states healthcare costs, and the difference between the 2 districts was pretty astounding. You know, for the same time period, he was in each district for 6 months. And it was like,
And full-time in both districts?
yeah, full time, first half of 1 year, second half. I mean, 6 months coverage in each district, and then healthcare costs vary by like a factor of 6
Huh, that should not
on the
happen.
W-2.
Huh.
It's like, wow.
Is the employer-employee split between districts? I'm assuming there's some variability there.
There might be because of there was 2.
It was a pretty amazing.
And I'm assuming he did not change types of health plans through the year, family or single or.
I don't know. It was just like,
That would have a big impact. That would have because if you go from single to either 2-person or family, it's a huge jump.
but it's a statewide
Yep.
contract
Yes.
for healthcare.
The 11.9 we're experiencing every district.
Other questions?
Well, yeah, I have a question. It may come up later, but when you were talking about reducing the size of the educators by 1 something, where is that happening? And was it like in the high school that it may mean loss of a subject?
No, there's fewer, it was at the high school. Because that's where the declining enrollment was, and so there's fewer sections. So we should not really have an impact on, we're definitely not dropping a course. Good question.
And if you're remote and you have a question, you can unmute or type it in the chat. We have no other presentations, so this is the opportunity to keep us here and keep you here and answer every question you have that we can answer.
Can we change subjects?
Are there any other questions about the budget before we change subjects to something else? All right, Dave.
I'm interested in the no phone movement. And I'm
Phone-free
curious
schools.
as to whether your board and the administration have been talking about it.
So we have talked about it, and we shared what we're doing, K to pre-K to 12, really. K to 8, there should be no cell phones during the school day. And at the high school, they have some parameters around it, depending on what grade level that you're in. Mr. Weston has shared with us that it's working well. So he told me we talked about that often. So really reduced the access and the use of phones at the high school. I mean, and really there's students at pre-K to 8 don't use their phones during the school day.
So that eliminates, by doing it by grade level, that eliminates the responsibility of each educator to set their own guidelines within the classroom.
Yep. And the high school, they have a leadership team and they met and they talked about it. And one of the pieces they thought was important was trying to support students, because once you get out of high school, you're going to have access to a phone. So really trying to incorporate an educational component to it, and show kids what some of the pitfalls can be and how you can use it for for educational purposes and some positive things as well, and how it can influence your life if that's all you're doing. We have a senior seminar as well where we dig into just healthy living and healthy activities, and that's part of it. According to Mike, it's working well.
All right, not seeing any other questions. I'm going to thank everybody for coming tonight and for, engaging with us in this process. We really appreciate this community tremendously and are really grateful to John and Nicole for putting together this very detailed, well thought through budget. And if that's all, I'll say good night to everyone and enjoy your Thursday evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.